Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be winterizing our Cobalt 292. To me, it's not worth the risk. I'd rather just disconnect everything and drain it all. Gosh, this thing needs a wash. That cover keeps the inside good and clean, but there's dust everywhere. Almost forgot. If you've got a freshwater holding tank, make sure to kick that pump on and drain the whole thing out. Got the back portion of the cover off here. We'll lift the engine cover up and we'll get started. All right, here we go. Oh, poor thing is so dirty. It's been sitting untouched and unused for several months now. So we're in Austin, Texas. We're gonna get a light freeze tonight and then probably down to around 19 or 17 degrees here over the next couple weeks in the evenings. Not terribly cold, so winterizing is maybe not as involved here versus other parts of the country that get really cold. First thing you want to do is lower your outdrive all the way down as far as it will go before it touches the ground. Just be able to, stick a piece of cardboard in underneath the fin at the bottom. Let it drain all the way and then raise it up maybe another ½ inch just in case your tires deflate a little bit when it gets colder and it doesn't make contact with the ground. Do that, that's easy. That's the easy part. It'll allow all the water to drain out of the outdrive if you keep it in the up position. I already did that on the outside, so that's done. Not much else I'm gonna do there. When we get closer to the start of the season, I'll replace the outdrive fluid, the gear lube. We'll go through and do an oil change and do some other maintenances before we get ready for the start of the warmer season in the spring. So now I'm in the engine bay here. I'm gonna step down inside and show you step by step how to drain all the water from the different points on this particular engine. This is a Volvo Penta 8.2 liter GSi. It's a Chevy big block form factor. It's going to be a very similar process on the 7.4 liter engines, the 8.1 liter engines, and this 8.2 liter engine variety on both the Mercruiser and the Volvos. You'll have slightly different drain points depending on what year and what model your boat is and your engine is, but this is a really good visual and a guide to use as reference so that you're not missing anything. You'll need some basic tools. You want a flathead for the worm drive clamps. You want a socket set, have a swivel with you, and a little wobble extension. I'll put the links down in the description. I love these wobble extensions. They're very handy. If you don't have a set, get a set, keep it in your toolbox. I'll put links down in the description below in case you don't have that stuff, you're doing it for the first time. I always keep this little toolkit on the boat as well. That way I'm not having to bring my tools from home every time I'm doing anything on the boat, because the boat's in storage, not close to our house. And it's good to have in case of emergency. I forgot I had it here. That's why I brought the sockets and the ratchet. But I'll put the link down in the description for this as well. Got it on Amazon. It's been a lifesaver a few times. It's great to have it. Sitting down in the engine bay. First thing I want to do, so this is your manifold. You're going to have one of these caps on both sides. If you go down to the bottom towards the rear, I've got this little plastic rubber cap with a worm drive clamp on it. I'm going to undo this worm drive clamp and then wiggle this plastic piece off, and you'll see it's just an open tube on the end, and that'll allow the water to drain out of there. Got the clamp off. Let's wiggle this rubber cap off the end of the tube. All right, there we go. I'm going to leave all my bits and pieces on this side and on the other side as I take them off, and I'm going to leave them off for the winter, and when we're ready to de-winterize the boat, I'll know exactly where everything is and be able to put it back on so I don't miss any plugs or caps or anything like that. Next thing I want to do is take the plug out for the water galley on the side of the block. So this is the manifold right up here. Underneath the manifold, you'll see right there, you see that guy? That is a drain plug for the water galley on the side of the block. There's one on this side, one on the other side. So I'm going to undo that and let that drain out. Got that loosened up. Now, do the last few turns by hand and make sure you don't drop it. There's a lot of water that comes out of that one usually. And there's the plug. So just like the other one, I'm gonna put my plug here. That'll drain out for a while. Oh, and the other thing, make sure your drain plug's out of your hole, and make sure the front of your trailer is slightly higher so that the water drains out the back and doesn't end up in your hole or in the bilge. While that one's still draining, I'm gonna go do the same on the other side. Got the cap off. Don't have a whole lot of room to film on this side, but leaving the cap right there. And let's get the plug out for the water galley. All right, that one is draining as well. You can kind of see where it is. This guy right here is the knock sensor on the side of the block. Here's the manifold, right underneath the manifold, knock sensor, and then plug in the same spot. Pull that and let it drain. Now, while I am on this side of the engine, I'll show you the two hoses I'm gonna disconnect from the water pump. Yours may or may not be in the same place. So, front of the engine, this is the water pump pulley. That is the raw water pump right there. And there's two hoses going to it, 1 and 2. So I'm gonna undo this clamp on the one that's closer to me, pull the clamp back, pull the hose off, and then put the clamp over here with all my other stuff so it doesn't get lost in the bilge. And then I'll do that with the second hose as well. I don't wanna leave the clamps on the hose because sometimes they'll just slip off and fall in the bilge and you'll never find it again. So loosen clamp, pull hose off, put clamp aside, loosen clamp, pull hose off, put clamp aside, and let both of these drain out into the bilge. All right, got both those clamps put aside and those hoses pointing downwards into the bilge, and there's the two outlets, number 1 and number 2. So if you look at the top of the motor, you should see some sort of a coolant neck with some hoses coming off of it. It'll be different based on which engine, what year you have. Here, I've got this right on the front of the motor, big hose, little hose. I'm gonna follow these both downwards and disconnect them down at the bottom. You can see the big hose goes right here, if you see that one. So I'm gonna pull that clamp off and take that hose off, let it drain out. And then this one actually goes underneath the motor and ends up down over there. Well, for this upper hose, I got the bottom clamp off, but it has proven a little bit difficult and stuck, and I don't have enough space to get leverage to pull it off. So I'm gonna pull it off the top first, which looks like it'll be easier to get off, and then I'll pull it off the bottom after I can kind of tilt the hose outwards. Okay, that is off. There's the upper nipple, there's the lower nipple down there. And now I'm gonna make my way over to the other side of the engine to get the other end of this hose, which creeps underneath the engine and down over there and terminates. Let me try to get you a good view of where that hose goes. So it comes down right there. See it? Goes under right there. And then kind of, let me see. There it is. You see that? It terminates right there. I'm gonna undo that clamp and then pull it outwards. And I'll leave this one dangling in the bilge. I'm not gonna disconnect the top piece. All right, that one's off and dangling down there. That's it. So for a light freeze like we get around here, that's really all I do. And follow that same procedure for the last, gosh, what is it now? 25 years? Longer than that we've owned boats. And it's always worked well for us. If you're in an area where it gets really, really cold, like down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit and colder, the other things you want to do is change the oil, the engine oil, and change the gear lube. And I'll tell you why. Engine oil, maybe not as much of an issue unless you've got a blown head gasket or something. But very often, especially on an older motor, maybe one that hasn't had the most routine maintenance, or it's just aged and it's tired, you'll have a little bit of water residue in your oil, and especially in your outdrive and your gear oil, you might have some water contamination, and that could freeze, especially if it gets really, really, really cold. So if you are in a super cold area, you also want to change the oil and change your gear lube on the outdrive. There's also another way to winterize where you get the 5 or 10 gallon jugs with the hose coming out to the clamp that you put on your water intake on your outdrive. You wait for the thermostat to open up after the engine warms up, and you'll let the antifreeze run through the motor and get to all the passages. Some people do that. If you want to do it that way, go for it. That's also another way to do it. The only thing that I've always thought about that method is, what if some water and not antifreeze is still stuck in certain passages in the engine and that ends up freezing? To me, it's not worth the risk. I'd rather just disconnect everything and drain it all. And last but not least, get yourself a bilge heater. I use this Extreme unit. We've had the same model and brand unit on probably the last 5 boats we've had. It works great. It has dual heating and dual safeties. All you got to do is plug it in, set it, forget it. When it gets down, I think, what is it, below 40 or 42 or something like that in the bilge, it'll kick on and it'll keep things at a decent temperature, right around 45 or 50 degrees, I think is what they're set at, so that it keeps it above freezing. It's not trying to warm anything by any means, but it's trying to keep it above freezing temperatures for the bilge area. So I always drain the fluids and everything, and then I plug in the Extreme heater as well. It's just got a long extension cord attached to it. Hopefully you're in a storage area where you have a plug nearby. Just plug it in. Good extra safety. The other thing I almost forgot, if you've got a freshwater holding tank, make sure to kick that pump on and drain the whole thing out. The only thing our boat uses that for is a little sink, a little bar sink that's up there with the lid open. So I just kick the pump on and I'm gonna let it pump everything out. Just like your engine block will crack, if that water freezes and expands, there's always a chance that the holding tank will crack as well if that water freezes inside. The holding tank is more flexible. It's some kind of plastic or polymer material, but it's always better to be safe than sorry. Drain, drain, drain. Almost there. And there's the holding tank for the fresh water. I don't know if you can see it in the video. It's almost empty. Didn't have a whole lot of water in there to begin with. It wasn't full. Like I said, we only use it for the sink, so it rarely ever gets used. It's got a little bit of squirt left in there, but it's pretty much empty. I'll give it about 30 seconds and then we'll shut it off. Last thing you want to do, if you haven't done it already, make sure you turn your battery switches off. If you don't have battery switches, get some installed. They're a lifesaver. Cover's on and she's ready to sleep for the winter. Gosh, this thing needs a wash. That cover keeps the inside good and clean, but there's dust everywhere on the outside of this guy. Bye-bye, Kobe. See you in a couple months. Had to get in the car. It's a little chilly out here. But as usual, I love you guys. I'll see you next time.